Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. This is the Goffstown Budget Committee. Today is November 30th, 2010. This is our planned final day to get information on the budget itself before we go into deliberation, which should happen on Thursday of this week, beginning at 6:30. So if, John, you would start the counterclockwise announcement of the membership.
John Dillon.
David Pierce.
Jen Getchell.
Guy Karen.
John Heichel.
Dan Cloutier.
Paul Agros.
Bill Gordon.
John Burt.
Ivan Beliveau.
Richard Fletcher.
Okay, I have heard, and I'm going down through the roster. Here, Christie has let me know she cannot make it tonight.
Boo.
Kathy Samard can't make it. If you noticed, you heard the name David Pierce. He is sitting in as the selectman representative. Sue Tremblay has indicated she cannot be here. And so if I count, that's 4, 7, 11.
John. No, I got John.
So who did I miss?
Bill Hart?
I don't know where Bill Hart is.
Bill Bates.
I'm not sure where that is. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Right,
7,
that's
8,
right.
4 plus 9, 10, 11. Okay. So I'm not sure about Bill. Now, it's Tuesday. I'm not sure. No. Bill Hart, I haven't heard from, and I haven't heard. Bill Bates mentioned something to me that he might be on the road, but I don't remember, so we'll hold that open. So, at this point, you guys have questions. One of the problems is we don't have representatives from the school to actually answer the questions. If we had Sue questions, both Sue Tremblay isn't here. So if what we'll have to do is I'll just have to take notes and see if we can't forward those on along to them. And we'll have to take a segue at one of our deliberation meetings prior to getting to the actual school to finish the questions and answers. How's that?
Okay.
So with that, are there further questions for the school and the budget? And tell me where you are in there, and we'll try to get the questions in the minutes so that that'll help me a little bit. Yep. Go ahead, Guy.
I have 4 questions for the school.
Okay.
And they're based on the budget sheet that we were given.
Which budget sheet? This thing?
Yes.
Okay.
We got an electronic version of that budget,
Yes.
and a lot of the lines were rolled up, such as district salaries, FICA lines, et cetera, et cetera.
On a piece of this? Or
On all of that, or the electronic version of that. And we also got separate spreadsheets with the actual salaries.
okay, I'm not sure what you meant by rolled up, and that's why I'm just.
Well, in other words, a line that says district salaries is not broken down by the individuals.
That is correct.
Okay.
For the record, it really never has.
Okay.
Whenever we've ever gotten a budget, it's just been one line, similar to the town. It just gives us a line. But we've asked for the supplemental information, and I have no idea, sorry for the segue for these really cool-looking kind of signs. Not only can you see the names on John, I can actually see the names on, how'd you get 2?
Will you explain it to him, please?
Yeah, please explain. Where do signs come from?
Bill Gordon made the bases, and I made the signs.
Nice. Well, thank you, guys.
Kathy Samard would be pleased.
Yes, Kathy Samard is the one that's been pushing for these,
And she's not here to actually see hers.
well, it's right there, so.
It's facing me, so there you go.
Yeah, and why they're double-sided is then that way,
We know who we are.
I
occasionally, I'm usually Bill,
Yep. And
so now I'll be John.
so I can see it. You're facing me instead of the audience. That works.
Well, being double-sided, the audience and everybody can see.
Okay, got it.
But you don't need to know who you are.
No, not today. Well,
He
no,
ran
you,
out of juice
Yeah,
in
yeah.
his machine.
so that's where they came from.
Okay, well, thank you.
Very nice,
and
thank you.
If it helps anyone to write down, if someone's speaking, they say, he said that,
Yes.
it works. Sorry, Guy,
No problem.
the roll-up.
Okay, the roll-up. What I'm speaking of, say, for example, or is actually, this is one of the questions. In 000, which is the district.
Yep.
Function 2290, other support services.
Yep.
There's a line for district salaries of 142,985.
142 or 145, 985?
I'm showing 142,985 from their spreadsheet.
Yes, there are I see I see two lines. I see one for 142.95 and another one that has, the reason is, there's two 2290s, as one's a 113 and one's a 118.
Right. Okay, the 113 line.
Yep.
142,985.
Staff instructional tech E-district salaries.
Now, what I did with the district salaries in all the function areas, and actually all the salaries in all the areas of the district, is that I actually looked at the totals, like that 142,985, and I went and cross-checked it against salary lines, okay? In this particular instance, the total of 142,985, if I was to break that down versus the salary spreadsheets, everything matches in totals for 113, dental insurance, health insurance, life insurance, FICA, workman's comp, except the salaries. It's off by $6,000. There's $6,000 in that 142 that's unaccounted for that I can't find. So I'd like to know where
The
that,
other 6,000.
where the other 6,000 is.
Okay,
Okay?
that's fair.
You want me to finish my other three questions on?
You can. Joanne set that one down, right?
Okay.
I'm just going for my little keypad so I can type all the account numbers in.
Okay. In 000, 2120 guidance services, 111, teacher salaries of 28,265. I'm curious to know whether this is a new position or not.
I'm writing something down here. You're saying I went back, the detail for the 142,985, you actually only saw 136,985.
Yes. There's an even 6,000 somewhere that I can't account for. And the only reason it caught my eye is that I was able to find the individuals that were assigned this line.
And you were able to get all the other
And
lines?
all the other lines, FICA and everything else matched up, so
Okay.
I'm curious why that total was off.
That makes sense.
I'm curious as to whether, what I mentioned,
What was that number in the 000?
it's 2120 guidance services, 111 teacher salaries. I'm curious to know whether or not this is a new position.
2120, what's the sub number?
111,
111?
111, teacher salaries.
28,265?
Now, in
Is
the,
there a name associated with it in the detail schedule?
yes, there is.
Then if, I can answer the question, you can't put a name to a position that won't exist until July 1st, 2011.
Okay, then that answers my question.
Okay.
I've also noticed some discrepancies in health insurance totals. One specific one would be 000, 1,200 special ed, 211 health insurance. Shows a total of 95971.
All right, excuse me, one more time. 000,
1,200 special education,
we're going backwards, okay.
211.
1,200, 211, 211. That's on page 7 of the master. 95,971?
Yes,
Yep.
I can only account for 94,851. There's a difference of 1120. But again, all the
Sublines.
sublines for the individuals assigned to this match up. So there's a discrepancy there. I can't quite. So I'd be,
94 what?
I can only account for 94,851. There's a discrepancy of 1,120 that I can't find anywhere. And my last question, I think, again on this District 1100, regular instruction, under 111, teacher salaries,
Hang on, 111, what's the, is that 1100, 111?
yes,
Oh, that's like on page 1, yep.
okay, there's an amount there for 20,000.
Yep.
I can only find that in the salaries under a category called asterisk, asterisk, track changes.
District teaching staff track changes, assume level funding from 21. What I believe that is if during the year, and we'll have to ask this question, a teacher is, at the beginning of the year, or when it's done, isn't quite where they need to be to get that track change, because they may not start, but it might be the beginning of the year, they may be budgeting.
What's a track change?
If you get to your master's level and actually get your master's,
Okay.
you may have a track change. It's someplace different. I can't know that for actual certain, but I think that's what I believe I remember. We need to get the answer to that question, but that might lean you someplace to figure out if that's where it is.
Okay.
Let's look at you have the actuals from last year?
Yes,
Let's see what that looks like.
$350.
Mr. Hart is here.
All right.
Come on in. If you want, we can help you move the long table, or you can use the little table. I take it you're pulling up your spreadsheet? Guy, are you?
On track changes?
Or that account number, which is 10-000-1100,
Mm-hmm.
111.
Yeah, I've got it up.
What was the year-to-date? Was it, you said
Oh,
300?
$350. Wait a minute, it was,
$350.
yeah, $350, actuals,
What's the budget?
20,000.
But last year, it was only $350.
Right, so,
It says 3-year average is 34,550. That's, this only did regular instruction. I'm gonna look at PDFs tonight. And Bill Bates is here. Now, Bill, I gave the same thing to Bill. If you guys, we can help you move the big table, and you'll have a little more room to work. You okay there? Just grab a sign that's yours and not the others. Okay, that's 13, all accounted for. All right.
Throw them in that bag, Bill. Thank you.
And was that the third and last question?
yes, sir.
Okay. What I'm curious about is, I want to go look at that. Do you need a plug? If you wanted to slip in there and take this and pull it closer towards you. You want to move that? Well, as far as this will go, like on the floor. Oh, no worries. Oh, or there's one there. Which one will work better for you? You're safe, Paul. Dig down 2010, financials, June. All right. Year-to-date 350. The budget was 0. Okay, this has to have been shifted from someplace. Okay, because the budget is 0. If you look way in the left column, it says budget 0. So how can we have a 3-year average unless we go to last year which I'm now gonna do that.
You're still on track changes? You're still on
Yeah.
teaching?
I'm still in the $20,000,
Okay.
but I'm looking at the budget, and you say the actual year-to-date is $350, which I noticed, but there's no budget.
Well, it says current adopted is 20,000 and the proposed is 20,000.
Right. In the prior year, the actual expense was $350. In that year, there was no budget for it, is what I'm saying. And so if we go back to the year before, which I have, and we look at the end of year June, we see that the budget was 21,186, and they spent 37,126. So it must have been 1 year prior to that. So if we go, because if we're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
let's go to 2008. They spent 79,184.
Right.
So it's gone from 79,184 down to 37,126, down to $350. That, to me, trends to like negative something. So it's a good question. It's an average. It's a reason for budget, but it's a good reason to ask what would prompt expenditure from this line. So that would be our question also, Joanne. What would prompt an expenditure out of this line?
Yeah, do we have a year-to-date on that number?
Yep.
Which is,
So
that would be from June 1, right?
July 1.
July 1, right.
So I sent out the November, was either late last night or very early this morning or early yesterday, I can't remember. $110. Budget 20,000, year-to-date 0.
Those are my questions.
You guys have some further explanatory, looking for some rationale on the school budget? Jen?
I'm seeing in a couple of I don't have one to pull readily available, but the purchase of smart boards have been recommended by the school board kind of across the district. So I wanted to just kind of get an understanding of how those will be used, what the impact would be if we delayed that purchase. It's not big dollars at the end of the day, but I mean, they add up. They're about $3,500 a piece. So I just kind of wanted to get an understanding of how those will be implemented, and are they present in some of the schools now, and we're trying to get them all up to, there's some at Bartlett and there's none at Maple, and we're trying to make that even, or just to kind of get an understanding of the purchase and what they're for, and what would happen if they don't purchase those this year, and perhaps look at that for next year.
Okay.
I had one other question, but I can't find the line item, but there is I believe it's the English curriculum that they were looking to upgrade this year, and does anyone?
Let me
know
ask
what it is?
Joanne, if you get the last question all set? Okay.
And I'm looking for that line item, I apologize, I don't have it.
I'm not sure if it's a single one or it might be in more than one. If it's all in one school, it's probably pretty close to in one. I'm looking now to see whether or not we've got some of the rationale that we can do a seek. With the PDF, we can probably look. I don't think we got this in PDF. We didn't
For
ask for
smart
it.
boards, you mean?
Either anything, any
Yeah.
words we're kind of looking for,
Yep,
the detail.
And I have seen it dribs and drabs and just trying to upgrade, and that's what the recommendation was, but it doesn't, I just kind of wanted to get a little bit more explanation for that. And then the other piece would just be the upgrade for, I want to say it's the English curriculum, and again, I apologize, I'm trying to get it at my fingertips here, but whether or not that can be set aside for another year,
Which one?
or whether it was an English curriculum for the high school, if I have this correct, hopefully I
So
do.
what were you talking about?
My question would be to, if
The first question you had, you talked
Yeah.
about English.
smart boards, is my, and then the English
We finished that
curriculum,
one.
right.
Then the English curriculum, yep. We'll see if we can't find it. Let me see if we can't, because there's no explanations in the Excel spreadsheet. It's all on the paper. And I'm not sure if the paper goes to PDF first. It would be cool if it did, wouldn't it? Okay. So the question on the smart board, Joanne, if we can say how many and where? And then we can still look in your, was it a particular school that you remember, Jen?
Well, I've seen it at
Okay.
pretty much all of them, so.
Okay. This will probably, as we go along, if it looks like we've got some open time, I am going to open it up for public comment, which we don't normally do. Tonight would be the last point to do that, because as we go into debate mode, for instance, it'll be the members debating, and that's our time. In the process, what happens on December 21st, which is Tuesday, our regular meeting, if we're already done, that's still okay. But if we're not done, will be a time before we complete, most likely at the beginning of the meeting, where we'll open up for public comment, and we don't go home until we've got numbers to go to the public hearing. At the public hearing is when the time for the attendees or resident of Goffstown has the opportunity of asking questions.
And what day is that?
That would be, I believe, the 13th, 12th? Hang on for a second.
January
It's January.
or February?
January. January is the budget committees. You guys got pens? Let's write this down. January 11th is the deadline for all petitioned articles and collective bargaining agreements to be delivered to the selectmen or to the school board. Okay? Which means we will get those and present them at public hearing the next day. Yeah. Anything that comes in after that cannot be considered on the warrant without a public hearing.
Petition articles, and what was the other one?
CBAs, collective bargaining agreements. That's the 11th. On the 12th, which is Wednesday, I believe, we will have our public hearing. It's going to be in the Heber Auditorium at the high school. We start at 7. We will present both the town and the school budgets to the public who assembles. Okay? If I have to postpone that meeting because it's either a bad snowstorm or some other natural kind of thing that just doesn't make us inclined to have the meeting, it will be the next day. That's what's posted. The town deliberative session, which is after we have the public hearing on the 13th, we do come back on the 19th, which is January 19th, which is our regularly scheduled January Tuesday meeting. Starts at 7. That's where,
You say the 19th?
I believe so.
It's
No,
here.
the 18th.
It is the
here.
19th.
It's the 19th, which is
Oh,
a
wait,
Tuesday.
wait.
Oh, it's the 18th.
It's the 18th.
Okay, I was looking at the 13th as the snow date. The 18th of January, it's the Tuesday. So if it's the 18th, it's the Tuesday. That's when we will make our final numbers that will go to deliberative session. We will take into consideration what occurred at the public hearing on the 12th or 13th for the snow day. Then we will make our final, it's not a recommendation, it's the number that's going to the deliberative session, which is on February 7th for the town. I don't know, I don't have the date here for the school, but it might be the 5th.
It is the 5th.
5th for the school, which is a Saturday. 7th is a Monday. This is the schedule that Sue DeRusso sent me. And there's a snow date of the 10th for the town, and we believe it's the 12th for the school. And then, of course, the March elections is the 8th. March. Excuse me, Bill?
The 5th is school deliberative, 7th is town,
Mhm.
snow date of
Town, the 10th.
Okay.
School, the 12th.
Thank you.
The school is what she wrote, I understand that's what it is for the school. I did not look at the website. to
And what
verify.
time on Saturday, did she say?
7 PM. So if you're talking about the school, I don't know about the school. I know all the other ones are 7 PM. Ours start at 7, the town deliberative session and snow dates would start at 7. So if we go to the website for the school, we'll take a peek, see if it's on there.
Do we meet this Thursday?
Yes.
Yes.
At 6:30?
We will be meeting Tuesday, Thursdays, starting at 6:30, beginning now. Unless we decide we don't need to because we're cool and we're getting along and we're going forward and we'll see what happens. But the intent is to start deliberation on Thursday. Bill?
Yes, at the school deliberation, I appreciate they've moved it to a Saturday. But they have traditionally taken up quite a bit of time before we've gotten into the real activities with presentation from the drama department and stuff like that, which I don't quite see what the heck that's got to do with the budget. I mean, it's a nice show, but, it's just got nothing to do with the budget, and it just drags out the day.
The history of that is pre-SB2 is a town meeting day. It's
Right.
not presentation of the budget. And I am unsure of what the current legislation indicates the activities that can go on those days. I'm suspect because we do more than just budget when the town presents to.
Yeah.
And so I'm
But not
thinking,
much, not in the time volume that takes up.
nothing we can actually do about it. It's a question, but
Okay.
It's derived by the legislation, not by the budget committee. Ours happens to be the January public hearing, and then it turns over to the governing bodies. I'm looking here, and I don't see anything in the upcoming events section on the Goffstown School Board, so maybe look at the public notice. We have enough time to go through it anyway, so we can.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, John.
on Bill's point, could they, I think it's true that the meeting, if it's supposed to begin at 6, in the past has often not begun, the actual deliberative session has not begun till 6:30, 6:40. Could the deliberative session start on time, on an announced time? I mean, who has authority to do that, if anybody? The
That-
moderator, I suppose.
That would be the moderator, yes. The deliberative session is under the charge. I misspoke earlier when I said we hand it off to the governing bodies. We kind of hand off the budget to the elected official, which happens to be the moderator, and you're absolutely right. It's under the control of the moderator. So if there is any concern over the agenda, I guess that would be the person to talk to. Not as a committee, but as an individual.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great if there's half hour, however many activities beforehand, but I think people are cutting out time in their day to be there as long as they can, and they'd like to know when it's actually going to begin. I think it'd help people to know that it's going to start at 10.
Are there any further questions on the budget? Oh, John did have his hand up, and then I got John and Bill.
Dan, just on for instance, those smart boards that Jen asked about, and we're gonna find out how many they need or how many
How many they budgeted for?
how many they budgeted for. And the reason, not that it's not a reasonable request, but the reason for asking them that is to just find out how many they budgeted for, or to
I think we can ask Joanne to read back what she has on that part of the question. I think it was a little more than that. You're looking for what would happen if we didn't get them.
let's say they said 10 and we want them everywhere.
It's,
That what, okay. I
if
mean,
it's, is it okay for me to say?
Yeah, go
It
ahead.
sounds like it's a multi-year project that they have, which, I mean, I'm not knocking technology, I'm just understanding what the project is, what the use is in the classroom.
Yep.
Do we have them now, you know, because certainly if it's a case that, you know, they have 5 at Bartlett and none in any of the other schools or something, yeah, that clearly is a problem. But if it's a case of they're kind of sprinkled about, can we hang tight to just what we have and maybe, so it's more the purpose.
What
Does
you
that
got,
make
Joanne?
sense?
yeah, it does,
yeah.
sure.
It says the purchase of smart boards has been recommended across the district. I want an understanding of how they will be implemented and how they are being used now. What would happen if they do not purchase them this year? How many are planned and at which schools?
And can I just add too, that is there technology that goes with that? Are there other costs, are there software costs, are there training costs? Is there something that we need to do in 5 years to keep up with the technology? I'm not aware of it.
Maintenance
I think it's
agreements,
great to bring
plans.
technology into the classroom, that's not what, I just want to understand this particular purchase, so.
Okay. That was,
Yeah, I understand.
and I got, John and then Bill. John? Did you-
Good.
you open? Bill?
Just a sidebar to Jen's question, I know that because Bartlett's my school, they do have them in Bartlett. I mean, I know they're, at least they're in the media room there. There is additional training costs, I can tell you that, and based on what I'm hearing in other schools, smart boards that go in without training and go into the wrong class, depending on the, no offense to anybody, the age of the teacher and their grasp or savviness to use technology, will not be used. So, I mean, your point's well taken. It's a good question. If we throw a lot of money at new technology that some teachers will not have the aptitude or will not get the training or are not tech savvy, then you're right, it's a wasted investment. So it's a good question to ask. So that's what I would tell
Can
you.
I make a
Follow
comment
up?
then as
Sure.
well? You know, and my concern again would be if Bartlett has several and Maple has 0 and Glen Lake has 0, you know, maybe there's 3 at Bartlett and we can sprinkle them about. Or, you know, maybe, yes, absolutely, it makes sense for us to get them into Maple because it certainly wouldn't be, you know, I don't think it's prudent for the community to only have them in one school and only some student. And I know, you know, that Bartlett does, I wasn't sure if it was a smart board, but they do a lot of technology at Bartlett. I'm not saying they don't do that at Maple. I believe that they do in the library setting, but I'm not aware of any smart boards in Maple. And that's the school I represent, but I'm not aware of any. So.
Right. I got the nickel tour. That's the reason why.
Okay, that's.
I got to see the little
Well,
kids
I've
using them
seen
too,
them, but-
which I thought was pretty
Oh,
cool.
that's cool. So
But they're not
it-
cheap. They're not
it's-
cheap though. I
well-
mean, having said that,
Right.
and the reason why I know about the teachers and the adoption of it is because, as I said to the committee before, my son's an assistant principal at a high school in another state, and there is a problem with certain teachers with a certain level of tech savvy having the, you know, not 1 but 2 smart boards in a classroom and they're not being used. So, you know, if this is not a time to spend smart, I don't know what time is, because why would you throw that much money at a smart board or 2 smart boards in a room if you don't have a savvy teacher that either been trained for or just doesn't feel comfortable using it? So it's a good question. It should be asked.
Well, it could be that our, you know, information technology staff for the district are already savvy on this, and they're the ones doing the training. That's what I don't know. So I kind of want to fill in the gaps.
Okay. Fair question.
My only other question at this point was to Guy Karen's request a last meeting to Keith Allard. Guy made a request to Keith in terms of other ways that he could save, and I didn't check my email today, but have we heard anything back from Keith Allard?
No.
I haven't gotten anything other than what I have sent you guys. Have they had a school board meeting? Who was going to the school board meetings? Because I'm presuming if they would have had some of that, he would have brought, I did think he mentioned, I'll bring that up at a school board meeting. So let's check the schedule. All right, I think we said the next one was going to be 12/6. And that Ivan was gonna be there. I don't believe, since we met on, it was the 16th. I don't believe they met. It was not scheduled for anybody on the school side go to a school board meeting? I don't think so. So I don't think they met. So I
Okay.
think the earliest we could get anything would be after their Monday meeting.
Okay.
And since we're gonna have to take time right at the beginning, right before our deliberation on the school budget, we'll probably take some time to get those answers. And basically, we're asking the questions. If we don't get the answers, you will have to make your motions and decide your decisions without. We've done that before.
The other question was just a general process question. You meant to say that we start having internal discussion this Thursday? Is that
It's
correct?
not, well, if you call internal discussion debate,
Debate.
yes. We go into formal mode before we leave tonight. We're gonna just start discussing our rules that we're gonna go forward with, the rules of engagement, how it's gonna get a lot more formal. And there's not gonna be any questions and any answers expected. So if someone says something and then you're up and you say, well, you know what you said, they're not gonna be able to respond. What this is basically someone makes a motion. It's not an explanation of the motion, it's a clear-cut motion. If someone would like to see that come forward to the table, they would second that motion. And as long as the chair accepts the motion and there's a second, then it would be placed on the table for discussion. The person who made the motion would be able to speak to their motion first, and those who second it would speak second. And then there's a list that's formed, anybody wants to speak, and it's a debate mode. Basically, what you should be doing is trying to either state your point, whether in favor or not in favor, not necessarily to try to gather additional information, but you could say, well, you know, I don't know how I can possibly vote on this because I don't know this or that, or without this is the way I'm going to vote. The reason is, what the debate is you're trying to get your fellow members to either agree with you, to vote the same way you're going to vote, or not. It's not going to be an open discussion where this is. It's going to be boom, boom, boom. And if unless someone says something that's egregiously wrong, I'm not going to butt in. A lot of times right now, I do channel through and I say a lot of stuff as we go along. There's some history that I've had and other members have had, and we just chip in. That can't happen. Unless it's an egregious error that I have to correct, it goes as it is.
Okay, well, and the reason for me asking that is because will there be an opportunity prior to formal debate for me to provide the committee additional economic information based
Sure.
on the latest, economic data that's coming out?
You
Because
ready? You ready now?
I wish I was. It wasn't ready in time, but it will be ready by that time. And prior to debate starting, I thought the economics that are going on in this country might be a good footnote to how it is you might formulate an opinion or decide on how we proceed. I just thought it'd be a good background. I wanted it to be the latest information.
Today would have been the day to do it. Another way you could do that is to publish that, i.e. you could put it in an email and send it to everyone and have it available for the world as an individual. The reason is, what I'm thinking about, if we're going to debate, if I afford you that opportunity to make a pre-debate statement, then everybody's going to get that opportunity on Thursday. We can do that. I mean, if that is what the committee wants to do that.
I'm fine with getting it ready before. I mean, I don't need to, I mean, it was supposed to be ready today, it's not, so.
Sure. We know how that happens, but if you guys want to start, we'd start at 6:30, but we wouldn't start at 6:30. See what I'm saying? The first motion to do anything, I totally expect Thursday to be a slow process through the process. The first time usually is. We have some new members, and the process needs to be learned somewhat. And within the first few motions and things, I may, as the chair, give some hints on process. Okay? So if the committee would like, and remind me before we end tonight, to see if that's something we want to start with on Thursday, then we'll do that. Is that okay?
I'm concerned about Mr. Bates you asked him to send messages around to the whole committee, yet that information won't be made public.
Actually, you missed what I heard, what I said.
Would you?
What I
clarify?
said was, you can make your opinion public. That was the first thing I said. If you can make your opinion public, you can do that, is what I said, by sending an email out, because you know all the committee's email and everybody else, and make it available to the public. That's how I mentioned it. I was very careful to make sure I didn't say, send it to the budget committee members. And this is economic information that can be done personally. Anybody has the ability to sending us email. We have all, I believe we probably all received some email. I have. And I can't impede the rights of individuals to express their opinions. What I can do is request budget committee members not to do the work of the budget committee outside the public spectrum, which is our formal meetings. So you can't get together and actually work on stuff that would be considered public activities. That is very well shied upon. I have no way to slap you other than saying I don't think it's there. There's a process in law that says if someone believes something is happening, then you go get a judge. That's where it goes. I see two hands. Why don't we start with John Burt and then go to Guy Karen.
Go to Bill's email that he may send.
Or we just say it.
Do it on Thursday. Now, what would be the harm of having that debate on Thursday and have all of us?
It takes away our time of doing the next step of this committee's job. That's what I was trying to sway the committee. If we're going to get into debate mode, we might as well get into debate mode. If we don't, then the first hour, possibly maybe just now more information gathering or something. So if the committee deems it important to hear what it is, in my mind, it's a pre-debate debate.
Now, are you allowed during debate time to give an opinion, to sway a person's?
Absolutely, if it is on point. Okay? If it's not on point, there is, and these are all little points we're making in between, there can be a point of order made. The point of order is, in our discussions, if we're talking about smart boards, for instance, there's some kind of motion on a smart board we're debating, and you bring up, well, there are just way too many of this or way too many of that, and has nothing to do with smart boards. You're going to have to wrap that into what you're talking about and how it relates to smart boards before someone may say, there's a point of order, where are we going? And it's legitimate. Usually there's a time period, but if you're going on and it doesn't appear that you're wrapping it in, that's where sometimes you've heard me start this in a few weeks saying, where are we going with this? We're talking about this. That's a precursor to where we're going to go with debate. The debate is on a topic that is called the motion. We really have to stick to what that motion is. So we can. The reason for the motion is so we can come to a question that says, do you agree with it or you do not agree with it? That's the end result on the motion, not anything else. So the debate should be limited on just the question. How are we going to do? Is it going to be all those in favor, all those opposed, those abstained? That is our goal on the motion.
But somebody could give an opinion, for example, the fire department.
Of course.
I said there was 50% volunteer fire departments in the country, and I'm totally wrong, very wrong.
Yeah.
It's closer to 80 to 90%.
Okay. See,
so can I throw something like that out? If that's what we're talking about.
You could.
To sway people to vote my way.
You could, and the other side of it is those of us sitting here who hear that thing have to then make a decision, Is that anywhere truthful, not truth? Did he back it up with facts? Can I look that up? Unfortunately, there might not be a whole lot of time. Those with laptops and internet connection can probably look that up.
Well, I mean, can you bring facts?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, sounds good.
And whether they're relevant to sway the body, in particular me, if you're gonna say, well, part of the country has 85%, does nothing for me. I'll just tell you right now, John. Those statistics don't sway me. I'm a Goffstown resident. I see what I want. I see how it works for us. I don't care what if I like what Bedford's doing, I should move to Bedford. You see how I'm doing this?
Amen, brother.
That is
Amen.
kind of like a debate.
Yes.
But even though I'm there, I also ask that the comments don't get diverted to a person. So I could be talking to the chair, but looking at you, and in a debate mode, please stay away from personal attacks.
Yes.
You can refer to what someone said. Try to keep your expletives, both good and bad, kind of away. Try to stay with factual representations and things that, because what happens is sometimes those words spur on additional debate that is, from my perspective, sometimes it's not meaningful, not helpful, but all it does is because somebody said something that somebody said, that person now has their hand up because they have to defend that they believe they actually said that directly or not directly or something. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's helpful. I'm not going to say you can't do it. I'm not going to sit here and say no.
No, I'm not gonna draw any names.
It comes up sometimes. You can
Yeah.
say, because what I say, you know what? This person just say that, you know what? I agree with them. And also, la, la, la. It's not becoming argumentative. We want to try to stay away from the arguments. And you can say, well, I heard that, it was 20,000. Well, the numbers I have here say 25,000. And that's the way we go. So it's from your perspective. So how am I supposed to know whether it's fact or fiction? That's what the debate board's all about.
After Guy.
Oh, go ahead.
I forgot about Guy. See, I didn't have my list. In the formal, I actually have a list so I know who talked in what order.
I have, my comment has nothing to do with process or procedure. I've got some
We're bouncing all.
discussion on the town budget that I wanted to.
Okay,
So
what do
I'll
you got,
defer to
Ivan?
you for now.
No, I just wanted to add something to what Bill said, because I had wanted to say something about prefacing and creating a context for our conversations and talking about the economy. And I had sort of prepared or generalized half a dozen comments, and I would agree with Bill. And working with statistics and figures are always difficult because there are biases. There's who prepares them. They're all different. But I really wanted to say something about the state of the economy either tonight or more in detail next Thursday night, to preface and to create a context for maybe a direction where we can go and consider.
There are 16 members of the committee. I would like to allot, if we want to do this, no more than an hour. That would give a little less than 4 minutes per person. If this committee so wishes, what we can do, and I know there will be some on this committee who will not necessarily want to make a comment. If that were the case, we can say, okay, on Thursday night, we'll start with the way we normally start, introduce ourselves, call to order, any administrative announcements that I believe we need to talk about, and then we'll start with a list of who wants to kind of like address the committee. And we'll limit it I can limit it exactly to 4 minutes and give you a 3-minute warning or something, and at 4 minutes, boom, we're cut off, mid-sentence. I mean, you guys okay with that? And if it only takes 15 minutes to do that, then cool. Because I got 2 members who want to do that, and I have one that's not ready tonight, and it wouldn't be fair to have you do it now, because then it's out of people's minds on Thursday, and so what Bill has to say is more in mind than what Ivan, and I don't want to give that kind of preferential treatment. And that's where I was trying to come. It's either all or nothing, I believe, to be fair. Okay. I mean, I don't have a lot of people saying no. I don't have a lot of agreement, but I have more people saying I'd like to do that than I see absolutely not. That doesn't make sense. So why don't we try on Thursday? We'll start that way. And I think 4 minutes is actually a very long time. I sometimes have difficulty listening to economic forecasts for 4 minutes. And if it takes that, if it wasn't in writing, I might just be gone. Jen?
Is there another way to communicate that information without people taking time? I mean, I feel as if I would personally want to be able to quantify the information that I'm hearing. Whether or not that person's giving backup and all that, I understand that that makes a lot of sense to me, but it just seems like that is really taking up a whole lot of time for people to share their opinions up front when that's the purpose of motions and...
Right, and yep. Unfortunately, the answer is kind of no.
Okay.
Because we're a public body, and in that context, it would be actually doing the work of the committee unless someone found a public method, and this committee can make that decision. So, we're not going to do that Thursday. As individuals, they can find a method of just saying, hey, I want to express my opinion. We've already said we're not going to do it, and however they want to express their opinion, as I said earlier, they can make some kind of, there are letters to the editors, there are websites, there are all kinds of different places for people to make their opinion. But this committee is self-run. We run ourselves. If we were to have a vote right now, I'm not sure which way I would actually lean. Whether I always try to defer to more than less. It's just that you guys got to keep in mind on the 21st of December, which is our Tuesday meeting, we are not adjourning until we have the numbers for public session. Now, we could do this even earlier. We could have it done Thursday. It's always a possibility. It could be done the following Tuesday. Okay, we have 6 evenings, 3 hours in the evening, so we have approximately 18 hours to do all of this, if you want to keep that in perspective. As I said, I believe when we start on Thursday, the first motion, I have no idea what it's going to be, but the process of the first motion, I believe, is going to take a while, because it's going to take us a while to get the nuance of what to do. We as a committee need to make some rule adjustments tonight, so to speak, that says, okay, amendments are allowed. We've gone as deep as amending an amended motion. At that point, that's where I'm saying, if we go any further than that, it's over for me. I mean, it gets way too complicated and it doesn't make sense. And it gets confusing for the body. Okay, so this committee can make that decision of how far down they want to go. And we've done it in the past where the committee at large actually made changes to their rules midstream, unless someone wants to make a motion that the rules stay put and cannot be amended, and if they are amended, can't be enforced until the next meeting, at which time that is not amendable until the next meeting. So, I mean, they get and can get very stringent, but I tell you, they are extremely good for the process, because there's no doubt about it. It is what it is. Like it or not, if we all know the game rules going in, you can work. And it's like we can play with the rules as they are. We can change the rules, but I suggest, because there was one time the rules got changed midstream, and it was one of those where I think I would always say, just like legislation right now, this budget committee was squished from 12 elected members down to 9 one year. But what that was approved one year could not be done, it had to do at the next time. So if this body changes its rules, my suggestion would be we cannot implement them until the next time we meet. And that might stop some of that rule changing, because those rules sometimes get wanted to be changed at the heat of the moment. Okay? Let's let that sit, And before we go to town, any more school questions? Yes, John?
Not really a question, a comment, partly to Jennifer's, but just to the general conversation about smart boards. I remembered from Stacy's PowerPoint that she talked about significant increases. In terms of smart board, she mentioned Mountain View and high school for adding more smart boards. So, and I actually was able to find the page numbers in here for those, but they're all listed under function 1100-731 under each school.
It's, okay, that's a good 1100.
1100.
So they don't have any smart boards, I take it, in 1200?
If they do, I didn't see them.
Right, well,
I don't know.
1200 is the special education, and
Oh, okay.
I'm-
That's a good question.
I would think it wouldn't be. In general education, it might be.
So there's none being asked for Glen Lake. There's 5 being asked for Mountain View, 5 new ones. And for each of these, the school board has added a couple for each. Maybe you remember that. Maple, the school board added 2, so they're requesting 2. Goffstown High, they're asking for 5 smart boards. Bartlett, they're asking for 2. And just FYI, a lot of those are listed with Proximas, and I think those are overhead projectors. But I think it's a good question to ask. Where do they exist now? I think that's a great question.
And what would happen, we just push them off a little bit? I mean, how are we doing it now? What happens, is there any costs that are not being done? I mean, we talk about not buying a truck. Well, I'm gonna need another 20,000 for expenses if I don't get the $500,000. I mean, something like that. We've heard that before too.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna go with that, with what
Right,
John's saying.
I was just going with another question, but go ahead.
Is that Mountain View does have smart boards at this time. I can't remember how many.
Okay.
They gave me a tour of the building. And I do remember seeing them there.
Further, John? Committee as a whole? School? We're on the school. Is there a member here from the public who wants to make a public comment about school? Go ahead.
I have a little bit more information, but I can give that to John later. Just one comment
If
about
you could
the
introduce
school.
yourself for the
I'm
record.
Ed Hager, by the way, I'm sorry, local resident. I have a friend of mine who lives in Dunbarton, part of their town government. He made a comment to me, and I don't know if the school board has heard it or if anything's come out of it, that Dunbarton and Bow may be looking at merging together, and Dunbarton students may be going to Bow instead of Goffstown. Now, currently, we have Dunbarton students 7, 8, and high school, and how would that change the budget proposal if that happened, if we lost those students? If it's being projected into the next couple of years or down the road, have they heard anything about it? Because it seems to be a hot topic in Dunbarton right now in Bow.
Sounds like a question for the school board. We haven't gotten any, I haven't gotten any information concerning anything in this budget that would not include estimated revenues and gross appropriations for the education of.
It could be introductory right now, but he said they're really looking at it because Bow is losing a lot more students than they're gaining. And I know it's been talked that ours are kind of overcrowded, so the shift has really been starting to look at sending Dunbarton to Bow, because Dunbarton's right in that centerpiece. It wouldn't be any more or any less of a travel time for students to go to Bow schools than it would to go to Goffstown.
At this point, there's nothing we can do about that one, but thank you. I mean, other than potentially ask a question if any member of the committee is interested.
If that was, in fact, to occur, that wouldn't have any effect on us, would it? In that any expenses that we have because of Dunbarton students is offset by revenue, right?
If any Dunbarton children would no longer go to Goffstown, but then go to another school district, it would affect us. If students who are currently attending a Dunbarton school then go to a Bow school, it would have no effect. on the budgets of Goffstown. Because we have an agreement with Dunbarton and New Boston that is what it is, to educate their students. It would take all kinds of different stuff in order to, you know, that's all SAU kind of stuff, and as if you heard me in the past, I've lamented highly over the way the legislature has put this giant together.
One of
It's,
the things that comes into play there is they have to give the receiving community a certain length of time and notice that they're gonna withdraw.
I think so. I believe that's correct.
Hmm.
And I believe it's gotta be
Like
at
5
least
years or something, isn't it?
I'm not sure how long it is, yeah.
I think it has to do with when there's a agreement for a certain number of years, and I asked recently, but I don't remember
The
when
area
it
was
comes
a,
up.
I think it's another 5. Pretty sure.
I remember you asking that, but I don't remember what the answer was.
Right. The area
No, I
agreement was
asked it of Ray
negotiated. Yeah.
last year, I think.
Is that a question that you want that's relevant to, okay. School? Town? Guy?
Sure.
Ready, David?
Yeah, Dave, you weren't here a couple of weeks ago. I brought something up. There's an item that, you know, maybe we can discuss right now on the town side in CIP, is the fire department's proposed tanker pumper. Okay? It's in CIP for $550,000. There's roughly 140 in capital reserve to offset that. So we're still looking at $410,000 and, you know, the option is, I think it was $60,000 to replace the pump housing on engine 5, or $170,000 to completely refurbish engine 5. But I had brought up the possibility of the $190,000 that's in the EMS fund for an ambulance. Now, the EMS is self-funding, I understand that, and I understand the money is there, and it's aimed towards the purchase of a new ambulance this year. But the EMS fund, the fire department could theoretically bill the EMS fund for the costs that the fire department incurs every time it sends an engine out with a crew following every ambulance call in town, and more than make up or come up with a bill of $190,000 that could then be used to offset further the cost of a new tanker pumper, so that the net effect is that this year we pick up a new tanker pumper, but the tax impact is only $190,000, and then next year, when it comes time for an ambulance, we put a warrant article out. We pick up the ambulance. The net effect is that we've spread the cost of this new tanker pumper, and I'm not even sure I'm going to support that yet, but this would tend to make me lean that way. We're spreading it over 2 years, basically, because otherwise the option is that we would get a new tanker pumper and a new ambulance. The tax impact is $410 this year and $0 next, but we could spread that over 2 years. But it would mean getting a tanker pumper this year and an ambulance next year. I need to know if this is feasible, if it's doable, because it's going to affect my decision on how I'm going to perhaps work on this CIP budget. And if it is doable, how do we go about doing this?
When we had discussions with the town, I remember I kind of asked the question was asked, and I made a comment, and that comment may not end up being absolutely correct, because I said that a discussion was had of that particular thing, where if it's required to send, or it is sent because of prudency, could that item then, in resulting conversations, could that item actually be considered part of EMT? And I think there was an expert that may have been consulted, and their opinion was yes.
What meeting was this at?
Was it the Saturday, October,
You mean the meeting we had with the town?
yeah, the meeting we had with the
I
town?
brought it up at one of our regular meetings.
Right, but I think, yes, you did, and, but I believe the question was touched upon at our big Saturday meeting. I'm not,
Okay.
if
It
my,
was discussed.
it was discussed, and I think it was, poo-pooed isn't the answer at the time, but it was thought at the time that it might not be applicable, but that's part of it. Did you have something else, Dick? I mean, because what happens,
Other than it's a process for dispatch, and the type of a call it was, and that required,
if that requires a fire engine, then it's an EMT call.
and one of them engines in the fire department, engine one, is set up for EMS emergency medical calls. It has a cabinet and the whole works, and, you know, in the back end of it, in case, say, the ambulance can't go, they can actually send the fire truck, so.
Right.
It
So
can go ahead of it, it can go.
the fire
with it.
department is
Yeah,
certainly,
dispatch is set up that way.
and dispatch, I guess, whatever coding they use, the chief explained,
Codes,
determines whether an engine goes or not.
if it's heart attacks, cardiac arrest,
But-
difficulty breathing, you know, it's,
So I would think that the fire department has certainly incurred at least $190,000 in expenses in going out on these calls with the ambulances, and that's where I figure we could justify billing the EMS budget to reimburse the fire department and help offset the cost of that
I
tanker
think
pumper.
you'll find that they're doing that.
I don't believe they are, Dick.
You know, when they
I don't
said
see
they
the
were.
revenue, there's a little piece that is in a budget this year. You remember what it is, Dave? Is it like 50?
No.
Okay. If we look, and I'll do that while we give David a shot, although I think he's writing down something. Have you guys talked about this at all?
No.
Okay.
The concept of putting an additional charge on the patient for whatever the ambulance services are, putting an additional cost because the presence of a fire truck. We haven't discussed that concept.
I'm not proposing that.
Well, that's what I heard you say, so please
Well,
clarify for me.
Let me come back and explain. I'm agreeing with David to the respect that the only way to receive funds from the EMS in order to have funding to reimburse the town would be to increase the fees. And the only way to increase the fees, because it's a not-for-profit, it cannot be a not-for-profit, it's got to cover costs because it's a municipal run. If the costs go up, the fees go up. How do the costs go up? The costs go up because you have to put diesel fuel in an engine because it has to respond. Code says you respond to a cardiac arrest with a fire engine. Those are extra costs. So those costs are borne because of that. So the fees go up. So in effect, what David said, it's personalized it somewhat, but that's where it is. There is a charge that goes towards that call. If it's a billable call, that would be increased.
Then where did the $190,000 for the ambulance come from? Are they billed for
Fees.
replacement ambulances?
Absolutely. That's built into the formula for the current fee structure. I believe those ambulances are in a 4 or 5 year depreciation mode, or whatever it is, and the cost to replace it
In the billing.
is in the calculation for the billing.
So apparently it's inadequate to cover the actual costs that the taxpayers of Goffstown are incurring because we are sending more than just an ambulance more than half the time.
Yes. Dick?
I think you might wanna look into the cost that they charge, which is pretty much determined by Medicaid or Medicare or however they're getting billed. They're using that figure, that's all they're gonna get for it. If you go to a private ambulance service, you're gonna find it costs double of what they're charging. Roughly. I won't say it's 100% double. You're gonna find different charges, but I heard of a charge by one of the private ambulance service for a call, $1,500.
So
versus,
ultimately,
500 or 600.
this is not a realistic way to help defer the cost of this tanker pumper.
Depends how you define realistic. In my analysis of numbers, it's a totally realistic way. Because one, I completely segregate the emotional side out of this to start with, and I start with the concept. The concept is, what is the cost that is being attributed when a call comes for an ambulance? An ambulance goes, a fire truck goes. If I look at the cost, there is a piece of time of the fire truck, you can look at that, okay? If the fire truck were staying at the station, it wouldn't be burning diesel fuel. It wouldn't have wear and tear on the truck. That's a definitive. It's argumentative that whether the firefighters actually went or not, would they still get paid? I think so. I mean, that's debatable. But in the context of cost accounting, you look to see what they did in that time period, and you allocate the cost appropriately. That's cost accounting. But there's a debate on the personnel charges. I don't think there's a debate on the engine charge.
Right, I would agree.
Yeah, the actual cost of that engine is not debatable.
So this brings into question the whole idea, or the whole concept, that our ambulance service versus privatizing is self-funding, because it's not. It's still costing us money because we're sending engines out in addition, but they're not being, the cost of that is not being reimbursed.
I don't know if if fire engines go out if in a privatized jurisdiction.
I think they do in Manchester, I'm not sure. I think they do, in some
Instances.
Yeah,
Some
some,
businesses.
not
Yeah,
all.
the same thing for us.
But probably not very much.
Okay.
One of the things is, that setup is an enterprise fund. And I don't think they can actually transfer money from one account to the other when they set
Gotcha
up
there.
an
They
enterprise
can.
fund.
They're in the budget for next year. I said 50,000. I was close. It's 48,000. They are transferring $48,000 from the EMS fund to the general fund. And if I look someplace in my notes, I will find out why.
What is an enterprise fund?
The enterprise fund is a self-funding model which cannot generate funds through the taxation of the people. That's the way I define it. I might be wrong, but that's when you talk to, like the food services fund. Is it
It's to run.
has its own
I think it was
balance.
to run the ambulance service and to fund it.
It was to run
And there is
EMT.
other enterprise funds in the town of Goffstown for specific purposes.
The sewer
Yeah.
is an enterprise fund, if you want to think about it. It has its own
Yep.
fund balance and is able to carry over a fund balance and not have to return it back to
Well,
people.
So users pay for that?
Users pay 100% of the EMS system right now. The EMS budget is 100% self-funded through fees.
Right.
Except for what Guy is saying, that they're not necessarily paying for
Yeah.
50% of the
No,
time.
think about what I said. What I said was
EMS?
the
Oh, the
EMS
ambulance, okay.
budget, okay? That's different from what
EMS
we
service.
can discuss and debate whether it's the total cost or not, but the EMS budget is.
But they have to be making money because they're taking $190,000 and buying ambulances.
No, that's not making money. That,
In the end, they're making money.
they have to show more
Yeah.
revenue than income in the year
Yeah.
for which they buy an ambulance that is then not purchased for another 3 or 4 years.
I understand you say it's not making money, but it sure is in my book.
Okay, Bill?
Well, I think, I don't know if there was a question out of there that got onto the record or not, but I think first of all, it's a very innovative way to spread out some costs in a very tough economy, and I think it's worth pursuing. Number one, whether or not, and I think you just answered the question, the funds are transferable, or did you not answer that? So
I
it's
believe they are
feasible.
because I see it here.
So I guess the question, if I'm getting, I think it's definitely worthy of asking whether or not that's a viable way to spread things out in a down economy. It's worth asking the chief. Or
I'm not sure if it would be the chief or would be Janice or basically, first thing I do is I talk to David. He gets first shot at it, being the selectman on staff. And if he says, I don't know, then we put it in a record and I can either, are you able to bring that to them on our behalf or do I need to?
You're correct. I don't know the answer tonight, but it's my job to get the answer to this committee.
Thank you.
And then the second question is probably just as important going into the next budget year. It is, if we're dispatching trucks going with ambulances, then there's not a fully landed costs being factored into the fees, whether it's picked up by Medicaid or not, it's actually a moot point. The point is, if we're not covering the true cost, landed costs of that service, then we should be looking at that and making adjustments.
That, again, and let me make a comparison for you, not because I support it, but just so I can make a comparison. We don't do that for the library. We're not doing that for Parks and Rec. Don't think we're doing that for the police department. That's a little harder, because we decided that there are certain services that will be spread out over everybody. Oh, here's a good one, you're gonna love this one. We're certainly not doing that for fire hydrants.
I'm gonna do
Because-
a wider distribution on that cartoon.
It's for water
So
distribution.
what are you saying?
I'm saying that that's a policy question, I believe needs to go to the Board of Selectmen for them to make a decision that they are going to apply fees for services. That, in the case, what I'm hearing is the full cost of fees for the service called EMS, which includes, at times, sending a truck that is currently supported mainly by the generation of property taxes to transfer that to fees. I believe that's in the handle of the decision of the Board of Selectmen.
I equated it to revenues. That's why I brought it up.
And that's exactly, revenues are totally under the control of the Board of Selectmen. We can't, we get estimated revenues, we can make our own budget decisions based on estimated revenues, but we have zero ability to put forth an estimated revenue number before the public.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but
No,
that's
I agree.
exactly where it comes in, is the revenues to offset that. And because this only happens like, and you're talking how much again? 190,000, 200,000, what were you talking about?
Yeah.
200,000 divided by, let's say, 5 years, we're talking about 40,000 a year, then you're talking about how to take that $40,000 a year and reimburse. That's really where it's coming from. Anything, David, or anything more? Or?
Go ahead.
No,
No,
he
nothing
doesn't have
to
it. But I saw John's hand. Then we'll
Yeah,
come back
go.
up.
Well, I was just going to add, I think it's a policy decision or question that the fire chief and the Board of Selectmen follow a policy of sending a truck, an engine, 50% of the time for an EMS call. I mean, maybe it's that, I'm sure that's in many areas standard fire protection policy, but it seems to me within the purview of this board to recommend or to, if an argument could be made, that's at least fiscally not a good use of an expensive truck. And instead, for example, why not send the SUV with a fireman or another well-equipped truck that doesn't cost $190,000, diesel wear and tear, just to many times go on an EMS call.
Let me ask Chief Fletcher, or do you want to take it first?
Yes, if
Okay.
you're gonna take fire department personnel and have them go in some non-fire truck to a residential ambulance call, it makes them not available to the fire truck if it has to be dispatched. So the men have to be in communications and have the truck available for a fire dispatch.
So basically what happens is if you're in a truck and you're on the EMT scene and you're covering up
Yep.
and you can be, leave someone there who can then
Sure.
ride in the
A
van and the other three can go to the fire.
Last-minute decision to say, we have a higher priority rather than this ambulance call. Fire truck departs and the men are already with the truck.
I'm gonna go to Dick first and come up to Bill, John.
You know, it gets very complicated, what you're talking about. It's nothing new. It's been going on for years.
Sure.
One of the reasons they do it is because when you get into these codes that they use, it's life-threatening. And many times you get there, you do your work, but you know, a person's too heavy for two people to handle, to put them in the ambulance, and you gotta call for help. So it's better to send somebody sooner, and especially in life-threatening situations, to get into the hospital. That's the name of the game. So if you're gonna have an ambulance, and you're gonna have EMS service, you got to provide the type of service that you need for people that have medical emergencies that are life-threatening.
Can I jump in? Do you want to jump in? 'Cause
Well, go
what I'm
ahead.
saying is, you just played directly into the argument of increasing the fees. Because you got to.
Well, to me, it begs the question, why do you have to send a truckload of, if, say you have a heavy
What Dave
person, you
just
need a
said.
third
Dave
fireman
answered that
or a
question.
fourth fireman?
If they're on the road,
I understand
they
that.
get it, and they're down, we'll say they're down at the other end of town.
What if they're a far corner of Goffstown? Then,
Right.
then they're no
When there's a
longer
fire
central
call,
to a
There's
fire,
a fire call.
Yeah.
They don't have to come back to the station to get
Not
the
a
truck.
time.
They can leave from there and go.
but they could be even further away if they're in the corner
They
of
could very
Goffstown.
well be.
So it
Are
makes,
you
it's not-
presuming that there's more than one fire apparatus available at the fire station for them to use if they were left at the station?
They do that in the two districts, and they go out of this station to a certain district, and they go out of that station to a certain district.
Yeah.
On an EMS call, this station might be empty. There's still some people in the other station. If something like that happens, they dispatch them.
But I don't think you got a sufficient answer to your question.
Well, my point really was that it's you were talking about a policy being whether fees will be charged, but I think it's also a policy that they do this,
It is.
that it's not carved in stone. I mean, to me, it doesn't fully make sense to me. I'll
Okay.
leave it at that.
I just,
And let me, before we go there, I've seen a couple of hands first.
It makes sense if you're gonna have an ambulance service.
One of the things that we can do, and it's good that we talk, put this into mind, because the discussion here had absolutely moot when it comes to debate, unless there was a motion on the floor that was wrapped around that said, I am going to, you can't do revenue, but you have to do expenditures.
Sure.
In order to affect what we're saying, we would have to increase the $48,000 sitting in Fund 20, 42201, 62800 from 48,000 to, let's say, 100,000. That does little for this body, other than increasing that budget. Because in order to enact it, okay, you're giving the tool to the selectmen to enact the possibility that they will increase revenues and they will make the transfer. You see what I'm saying? It did very little for this body to enact something like that. That's why it's totally policy. I see John, John, Bill, and back to Guy. John?
Two parts. One is if we're going to recommend or throw something at the selectmen to do this, we probably should add police in there, because the two calls that I've seen that my neighbors, two separate neighbors, the police were there at the same time. So, if we're gonna throw it all in there, let's go for it.
I don't think we are.
Oh, okay.
There's no motion that we're gonna take, because there's no authority in statute that, I mean,
Yeah.
we can come to we've done this before, and I'm saying, okay, guys, where are we going? Let's stick to our charge. If you wanna, I'm sorry, if I'm gonna be tough, I told this to David once, and I don't know if he took me up on the offer. If you wanna, no, he didn't, I'm just making this, but if David was on a budget committee, he may have some of those opinions. The only way to enact them is become a selectman.
Well, the other,
Now he's in the hot seat.
well, the other thing was, I agree with John Dillon as, if the fire truck is there on a particular street and they get called elsewhere, I agree that fire truck needs to go, but I believe there's other firemen that could hop into that truck at that station and take off.
There may not. From what I understand, there are 5 in each station. You need a minimum of 2 per truck. So it's possible they could have sent 2 or 3 to, am I anywhere close, David?
Possibly you're gonna empty a station with a truck and an ambulance.
Okay.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking is then that way, it only takes one person to drive that fire truck.
No.
And he takes off, that person that is in the SUV like John Dillon was talking about,
Okay.
he jumps in his and meets him at the fire or whatever it
You're
is.
back to policy, okay?
Yeah.
The policy is, and the
We'd like to
fire
do a
has gone
budget.
through all of this,
Yeah.
and again, we're going round and round. Now, if,
Can we
here's-
afford it or not?
okay, let me put a practical thing of what's gonna happen on
Raise the taxes
Thursday.
to pay for
Hang
all
on,
this or
John.
not?
John, just a second. Here's what's gonna happen Thursday. You have an opinion about something. I'm telling you it's policy. I won't let that happen on Thursday unless you say, I make a motion to do this because of this. If someone would agree with that, they would second. Then we would debate the budget ramifications of your idea, not the policy. Okay? You see how we're gonna have to wrap that around budget, appropriations, not revenue, not policy. Because there's little this committee has other than appropriations. This is what we do. We take an appropriation, we send it to the public meeting in January, we come back, and we provide a number for deliberative session. That's our job. We can talk about policy all the time. They can listen. Unless they do it, nothing happens. And they're not required to. Just like a couple of years ago, they came up with a code of ethics. They sent it to me, and I gotta tell you, I sent it back. They have no authority over this committee. We do our own policies, okay? We take a vote, okay, by a show of hands. Never did before. The people, through a petitioned article, which passed, by the way, had more yay votes than nay votes, was not legal, not deemed legal. We do not have to raise our hands in order to vote. This committee has, at the beginning of every session, I've made sure I asked, do you guys want to follow what the taxpayers asked us to do? Because that's all it was a request. And you guys said yes, and so we do that. Similarly, whatever policies we talk about, wrap them around what you're thinking of doing with a budget. That's the only way it's going to become a motion that I can accept. Okay? And keep in mind that it may never pan out if the selectmen don't do something.
Thank you.
Oh, look at,
All right.
Chief O'Brien is here. We were talking about fire trucks. Did you hear?
I was at home and thought you might need some help.
Nope.
Would you like to
Yeah.
pull up? We're all set. Oh, gee whiz. No, I'd love if you
We
would
just figured
mind,
out.
if you wouldn't pull up a chair and if you want to just go over and, John, I'm gonna give you the floor because you had most of the questions that you were not,
Please don't
Point
tell
of
me you
order.
sit at home.
okay, hang on for a
in that
second.
uniform.
Hang on for a second. Did I,
Yeah.
Must be full up.
Guy?
Just point of order, that my interest here is not in policy, it's not in procedure, it's not how things are being done. I'm curious about how I might address this CIP request. And if I
Okay.
can't find a way to fund it the way I proposed, I'd like to discuss other options, but I'm not interested in
so
how
let me do
business
this.
is being done right now. I've already heard all of that.
Let me do this. John, I'm gonna take back giving you the floor because it did start, now that.
Started with Guy,
It
that's
did
right.
start with Guy. So, Guy, why don't you start with yours and I'll segue around.
Then, all
Ask
right.
the question so that we can have it in the public arena again, so the chief hears it straight up.
In lieu of what I had thought about or suggested earlier, is there a way for this committee to say, okay, $550 for a new tanker pumper? No. Let's take half of this, put it in capital reserve. We'll get the rest of it the following year. We'll buy it next year, spread the cost out. Can that be done? How would we go about doing that?
Putting it in capital reserve, yes. You could take $275,000 and you could put it in a special warrant article. It would have to be a special warrant article in order for it to be a capital reserve. It can't go in CIP. CIP is for hard goods.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
So that would have to be something that would have to go in, and if passed, then it makes it part. If it doesn't pass, then
Is that how the 143 got there in the first place?
that's how, yes, there were two capital reserve funds, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 years in a row, at least 1 year in a row, I thought there were two, that got $600,000?
There was one request,
For 3.
I believe in 2007.
Yep.
That was approved as a warrant article for $420,000. The following year, another attempt, similar amount, was approached to the voters, and that was denied. That was voted down. I believe since then there hasn't been another warrant article asking for additional capital reserve funds.
Okay. And
So we had used approximately $300,000 for the purchase of the new tower ladder. So giving us the $120,000 and change that remains in the account at this point.
Chief, could you set a rumor aside, by the way, that I heard from 2 people over the weekend that the new tower ladder has a problem with the new roundabout?
The roundabout, we can negotiate the roundabout with the new tower ladder, so we can get through. Like any other roundabouts, whether it's the Grassmere one or the new one by the high school, it just slows our response time. So when our trucks go in, whether it's the tower ladder or a fire truck or an ambulance, we have to go negotiate it slower, so it slows our response time down.
Okay, but that tower ladder is not going to have to circumvent and come around Elm Street.
Navigates
Okay.
that quite well.
Okay, thank you.
So just take it
You,
slow.
you use the rumble blocks, or?
Actually, no.
Really?
That truck is
There are
designed,
none.
it's got a 45-degree cramp angle on the front, so we can navigate that without even hitting the rumble strips.
And I've stood there and watched the tower truck
Brave man.
navigate.
I'd love to
The horn, beep, yeah, ring the bell.
Okay, I've got my questions answered.
Was that rumor put aside now?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so we makes it through. John, you're up.
Sparky.
Ambulance?
Yeah, well, it seemed to me, correct me if I'm wrong, is one question answered, though? We were talking about shifting the cost of a replacement engine, $190,000, to ambulance fees, and if we don't do that, you can't really say EMS is self-supported.
That depends on the definition of, let's define the total cost of providing EMS services. There's been some discussion, Chief, that the total cost of providing EMS service in the EMS budget does not include the cost of sending apparatus along with ambulances.
Right. Earlier, I was listening to the argument or discussion, and it said 50% of ambulance calls include a fire truck response.
That's what you told
That's
me.
what you said.
What was said, it was 50% of the calls rise to that level where fire reppers may respond. Because of our staffing levels, one may not respond. It could if we had the staffing to go on it. But typically, for example, during the day, we have a response for a chest pain call. It rises to that level where if we had the staff, a fire truck would go with it. But the 3 personnel will jump on the ambulance as a company and go to that call. Where a case where we actually have a fire truck assist the ambulance probably occurs, say we do 1,000 transports a year, which that's probably what we do. Out of that 1,000 transports, I'd say maybe 200 times of that year is where you actually see a fire truck assisting that crew on the scene.
20%?
Because whether it be assisting with care or lifting or just patient handling in general. So the other discussion I was overhearing is, well, can you actually take that time that apparatus is committed to that call and say, we're gonna take that out of the cost of doing business for doing the ambulance. Well, it's tough to parse out that portion of it where technically they could be available for another fire response if needed. As soon as they're say done lifting or assisting with patient care, whether it be starting an IV or lifting the patient in the ambulance, then that crew is available to respond to whatever other emergency that comes to be. So trying to measure out and truly allocate in the sense of budgeting goes, allocating what it costs for that fire truck to take a trip over to that residence or that scene, and to the moment where they're now available, be very difficult to do.
If I can jump in, Chief, the discussion wasn't centered as much around the cost of personnel as it was the variable cost of the truck itself. Because of a truck, if it sat in the bay for a year and never moved, it still get whatever, it's got less wear and tear than if it had gone to calls. And it moves out of the bay to go to pure fire calls, and it moves out of the bay to go to a scene that is not a fire call and comes back. So we could actually have some statistics that show either the number of hours it ran or whatever is used to tell how old a fire truck is, either hours running or mileage or something that compares the time it was out of the house for EMS calls versus out of the house for fire calls. And that would be, from my perspective, a variable cost that could be determined to say the total cost of that truck for this year was, and certain
again,
percentage.
on the same argument, we could parse the cost of the ambulance calls, ambulances going to fire calls.
Absolutely.
So, again, we feel it's probably a wash if you're talking about, the number of times the ambulances, go, again, our ambulance crews, say if a crew goes to a chest pain call, that same chest pain call we were talking about earlier, they're at the hospital, and all of a sudden I have a garage fire, they're gonna clear the hospital and respond to that garage fire with the firefighters in that ambulance, and meet that fire truck on scene to complete that crew. So, again, you're using the same wear and tear theory on now the ambulances to respond to fire calls, whether it be a fire, alarm activation, hazmat spill, you name it.
I think you've introduced a new paradigm that we had not discussed yet. And probably I was unaware that we were sending. Now, are there any statistics that show, even gut feel, that the ambulance goes to as many fire calls as the fire truck goes to ambulance calls? You know where I'm coming from. And the cost, not the personnel, but the cost of running the fire truck in that direction versus the ambulance in that direction.
Right. We haven't done any studies because, again, in the fire service, the trending is fire-based EMS is the trend evolving across the country, and it's kind of like the job we do. And, for example, even in Manchester, they're running fire trucks on medical calls all day long. In fact, I was at a medical emergency on Elm Street, and a ladder truck showed up with an ambulance. Again, how do you parse out the cost of one particular apparatus over, say, an engine or what have you?
Cost accounting.
Cost accounting, however, again, this is what we do. We provide the service, and for us to try to say, okay, this month, the ambulance costs going to fire calls outpace the fire trucks going to ambulance calls, and do a monthly accounting on that, and we just don't do that.
And the question, if I can go one step further, the estimated cost of doing that has to play a role in this as well. So you need a bean counter that could actually, but I gotta believe you guys have statistics on every time that truck moves.
Every truck that rolls to an incident, we account for it.
Yeah.
Every firefighter that rolls to an incident, we account for it. Whether it's a medical emergency, hazmat, traffic accident.
So it's all in potentially programming a new kind of report that comes out. I can't speak for the committee, but there's been a lot of discussion on that side, and take it as it is for the moment. Dick is dying to speak.
Well, first of all, I know you have an incident report for every call, and it gives the times and all that, right? So that's not hard to say how long that truck was there. I don't know if it puts the manpower. Does it put the manpower?
It does, well, the initial manpower, we have a new program now that we're using for 2010. We started 2010. That can account for manpower also.
Okay, the other question, So we charge so much for an ambulance call. It's my understanding, and what I've heard, it's only hearsay, by people in the industry, so, that the private ambulance service is probably charging twice as much.
Traditionally, private services, again, they're there for a reason.
Yep.
To make money. We're there not to make money, but to provide a responsible service to our community. So what we've decided, along with the Board of Selectmen, is to bill or charge responsibly. Looking at our payers in town and looking at who our patients are and what they have, whether they have insurance, are they on Medicaid, which is the welfare end of healthcare, are they on Medicare, or do they have other means? So we look at our payer mixes, and we made a decision at that time to gauge our fees to the current Medicare rate, which comes out and established every January, plus 20%. We thought that was fair, and it wouldn't leave any of our residents in a predicament where they couldn't possibly pay. And then we have hardship policies where if somebody just can't pay and they're a Goffstown resident, they can apply for hardship and be granted if they qualify. Where a private service, they really don't care what your current financial status is, and they have to bill for their services and maintain their overhead. Where if you're a Goffstown resident, you're paying taxes. This is what you're paying. You're supporting the framework that supports this service that theoretically your right supports itself.
John, further.
I'll just quickly say, thanks, Chief. As a layman, and that's part of where my perspective is coming from. Obviously, I have no expertise in fire things, but an ambulance, if it costs $200,000 and an engine costs $600,000, and we have no choice to send an ambulance to a fire because you need an ambulance at a fire, but it seems like you do have a choice of sending a fire engine to an EMS call. If in my mind, if a fire engine is mainly for fighting fires, and it seems that one reason you might not want to do that, in my layman's mind, is a fire truck is a lot more expensive. An engine is a lot more expensive. It's 3 times as much as an ambulance, and so I don't know if that's worth.
No, please respond.
Yeah, I can respond to that. I think you guys were touching on it a little bit earlier. First of all, this truck is not a typical engine that we're replacing. It's a combination of a pumper tanker. So that's the reason why the cost is higher than a typical engine right now, $550,000. Right now, if we took a stock truck from a reputable dealer of just a fire engine without a very large water tank on it, you're talking maybe $400,000, $450,000. So it's a little less. It's still a lot of money. But I think, Chief, you brought up before is we only have a limited amount of resources that we can use on a day-to-day basis. Resources as in firefighters. So, for example, as soon as that fire truck can clear from a medical emergency, they are available to respond to another emergency. And something that I brought up during my presentation is very frequently we're having simultaneous calls for service. What does that mean? What that means is while one call is being handled by our crews, another call is coming in for some other reason, whether it be a fire, or another medical emergency, or a rescue, or whatever it is. It's something that I can't predict, obviously, but for example, Monday we had 3 simultaneous calls just on Monday alone. Everything from a car fire, from alarm activation at Maple Ave, and we had a medical emergency. It just, it's something that we constantly flow with every day. So as soon as that crew, that medical emergency, that fire crew can clear and say an alarm activation or a fire call comes in, they immediately get on that truck and go directly to the scene versus going to the closest fire station and picking up another truck, which may not be adequate for that call. So it's probably taking our resources and maximizing their abilities at any moment in time. may not be the best, the most cost-effective way, but it's maximizing our resources for the needs of the community.
Would you say in firefighting, time is more important than idling trucks? Response time. That's kind of like what I heard.
Yeah, without a doubt. Again, that's what I call turnout time, is have the ability to get on that appropriate piece of apparatus and start rolling to the scene. And yes, it could be at another location, not as centralized as the current fire station, but it's still, you're not having to go all the way back to that fire station and then jump on or load onto the appropriate truck and then start responding to the scene where you may have already passed it. So I'm trying to get back to that apparatus. We just don't want to be put in that position. We want to be as efficient as possible.
Well, and that makes sense to me how it can actually be cost effective, because if you're saying, if you had more firefighters, for example, back at the station or whatever, you could but you don't. You're maximizing resources, so that makes sense to me.
Right. Some departments that have more personnel they have called EMS fly cars, and for that purpose, they would stick them in an SUV, and they would support the ambulance crew if they needed an extra set of hands lifting or even providing care. They would go and then they would clear and would go to the next call.
One thing you have the benefit of too is police still respond to a lot of these calls.
When they're available, they're helping us out, and we greatly appreciate it.
They can lift too.
They can lift too and hold IV bags, and they do a great job.
And I suspect many times there's other people in the residence who need to be talked to or calmed down besides the patient.
Well, no, the police officers in town work well with us in both medical emergencies and car accidents. They're getting patient info while we're doing a lot of hands-on, and they're supporting the family when we really can't because we have our hands full. So again, it's a team effort, and it takes a lot of work to make patient care great.
Do they still have jump kits, and do they have defibs?
I believe that some cruisers still have the AEDs, the defibs in the cruisers, and some jump kits. So they are an integral part of the first responder system that we have here in town.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. How is the repeater system working? It's installed?
Well, currently the vendor has been awarded the project, and we actually applied through the FCC for a new frequency. They're able to give us a great frequency, so we have a new frequency to work off of. And they're currently programming and ordering the new equipment for install. So we're at that phase now. It should be installed in the next month or two.
Okay. One of the reasons I asked the question is because, David, is the police portion of that in this budget coming up? Do you remember?
I'm getting a nod, yes.
Okay.
It is, and again, we've been working with the same grant folks to approve a grant to help us with that cost also.
Because the reason, it gives me more warm and fuzzies, because we've tried this a number of different times using a number of different methodologies. This one seems to be the best solution from what we had even talked about maybe 10 or 12 years ago. The warm and fuzzies come to say, yeah, it's installed, and yeah, it's working well. Let's get the police their communications as well. When you say a great frequency, what does that mean?
The problem that we're having is the fact that our transmitter is on top of the South Peak with all the other antennas up there.
Yep.
And what's happening is the frequencies that we currently run on do not match well with what's being transmitted up off of the other towers. For example, there's two paging towers on that mountain. The pages that I see a lot of doctors and nurses carry around, they're constantly transmitting 24/7. And when they're doing that, every time they transmit, they're bombarding our tower with their frequencies. And they're so close that what happens is if you have an officer or a firefighter call on their radio, their signal has to be so strong in order to overmatch that interference on the mountain.
Okay.
That's the reason why our dispatch center can't hear us, okay?
Yep.
So by having a frequency that's separated itself away from that band area, we're gonna be transmitting clearer than we ever could before.
So not only will having the repeaters assist, just having the better frequency,
I think will help.
is that already in play? I mean, we're gonna need new radios. Radios are already purchased that are programmed in that frequency range, can be programmed, or what's the additional cost of getting that ready?
We have the ability to program the radios in-house.
Have you been awarded the frequency?
Yes, we have.
Is there plans to, because that frequency is so far away, to initiate it before the repeater's in?
You would take equipment installed to do that. Currently, the transmitter up on the mountain doesn't have the ability to be changed over. So we're just gonna wait until the new transmitter's put in, and then we'll fire it up.
Will you have redundancy for a limited amount of time, just in case?
Just in case, we're gonna test the system, make sure it's up and running before we go take that next step.
Just came to mind while we were talking about it. We have the chief here. Do you guys have any further questions on the fire budget? You can talk about the police budget too, I mean, if you'd like. Probably wouldn't say much.
How about the school budget?
The school budget? Yeah, we can ask them questions.
So-
I'm not sure how that would work, but,
Are we
no,
through
thank you.
with Chief?
Thank you for stopping in. I think it was a great help.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. It's 8:22, according to our pre-approved plans, at 9:20, no later than 9:30. You've given the chair discretion to call for motions to, and that's in about an hour. Okay, so we've got an hour left tonight. How do you want to proceed? Further questions you need clarification on anything prior. The intent on Thursday is to go to the town budget. We've had more time to look at it, to analyze it, to see how it goes. So one of the first things I'm going to do on Thursday, after we get through tonight, is I'm going to, tomorrow night, I'm gonna make sure it's balanced, similar to what Guy was doing with the salaries. I'm gonna go through and hopefully get all of this stuff on my spreadsheet and balance to a number. And I will present that number to you for a motion to get our starting point. Traditionally, we have started with budgets that were prepared pursuant to the RSA, and we have accepted them as a starting point. It's not required for us to start from that. We can start from where we want, just like the legislature. They can start wherever they want. They can start from the governor's budget, or they can prepare their own. And 2 years ago or 4 years ago, I think they may have started at a different place. I can't remember. That would be the first thing I'll do, is I'll present you a number. So, because we need some place to start from in order to make motions from, which segues me into the rules that we go on, and some of the rules, and I'm going to try to go through my head. If anybody of you know of some of the other ones, just pipe in and we'll get them all together. You can write notes, because I'm not going to write them all down. It's going to take too long. The first thing you can do is, once we start with everything has to be a motion, okay? Before that motion gets accepted as a second, it needs to be accepted by the chair first. And that means I really need to understand what it is you're trying to get at, to make the motion clear, to make it so that the scribe can put it officially into the record, much more definitive than really minutes. If anything that we do, the motion has to be accurate, precise, and particular. Okay, so it follows all the characteristics that we can all understand where we're going and what it is. Once I believe I have that as a handle, and we negotiate, we understand each other that what I heard as a motion is what you intended to say, we will go for a second. Okay, I won't belabor the point if it doesn't look like a second is made. A second does not have to be made. Okay, if a second not made, I will call that it's taken off the table, and we go for another motion. Okay, one of the things I did last year is, because a lot of times what I used to hear was, I'm going to second that because I believe every motion should be heard and discussed. Personally, that's not what it means. Okay, that is the reason why you have to have a second, is because if someone makes a motion and everyone else on the panel doesn't want to talk about it, you shouldn't have to talk about it. If you want to talk about it, second the motion. But I tell you, if you say, I'm gonna second it, because I believe we should, every motion, I will make a comment at you every time, okay? And I will accept your second, because that is your right, okay? Whether you wanna do it that way or not, that's okay. But I will probably make, because why are I trying to get the system to flow? That's my job. Let's flow. Let's stay on point, let's flow. You have a question yet,
Flow.
Bill?
About the process.
Yes. Go ahead.
But you were going to start at a number
Yes.
by department.
No, I'm gonna start with the legislatively mandated MS7. That is a form that this committee is required
Okay.
to provide.
So my question is,
These numbers.
so you already, that's determined what number you're starting with.
It is not necessarily
So
determined.
how are you going to do that?
I am going to take this book, which was delivered to us, that we've been looking at for the number of weeks, and I'm gonna put that in an MS7 format. And I'm gonna say, here are the numbers and how they were derived. Derived from the selectmen's presentation of the budget.
Okay.
And that basically, I'm gonna say, is anyone, if you want to support that as a starting point, someone would then, I can even make the motion as the chairman. I would rather have someone else make the motion. If you don't, I'll make the motion and look for a second. If we second, then it's a vote. We can discuss it if we want to, okay? I wouldn't belabor the point, we gotta start someplace. If it's the feel of the committee, we wanna start there, the motion fails, and we gotta start someplace else. Someone else would then have to start with a budget in an MS7 format, at minimum MS7 format, so that we can actually start the process. Is that clear?
It's clear, the process is clear, but how you're coming up with what you're going to put out there is not clear, but that's all right.
Okay, well, no, let me go forward. If you grab the budget that was handed to us by the town, and you look at the purple sheets, and it says town budget summary.
Oh, okay.
Okay? This purple sheet says, which includes everything, the budget by the BOS is $2,954,723. That's what the Board of Selectmen handed us.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say I'm gonna present that number, because I personally haven't taken all the detailed numbers, put them together, and made sure that is accurate.
Got it.
That's what I'm saying. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm presuming it is, but I want to go through all the details, because you guys hopefully are looking at the details, and then you're going to look at the tab 1 and say, Public Works, this is what I'd like to do with Public Works. Police, this is what I want to do. But
Got
we
it.
have to start from someplace, so.
Got it. Good, thank you.
So you have the numbers, it's just an arithmetic operation that I want to do. That's where we start. Now, if someone, and I am not, unless you guys want to go forward and saying, we'll start with Public Works, I'm okay with that. And then we go to Fire and EMIN, and we'll just go through the tabs. We've done that in the past years. At other times, someone said, nah, I really don't want to do that. I want to make this motion, which is big, heavy, and cumbersome. You can do that. Unless we as a group want to vote, and we can do that tonight and debate how we want to go, or if we don't get that, I want to get through the whole process before we get into that.
Got it.
To understand, but we are self-controlled. Again, I believe we will take a formal vote. Not necessarily, but we will agree as a group to say, hey, listen, if we want to change the process, it can't be effective until the next meeting. I think that's, as the years go by, I always think of something to do what we've done better to try to streamline the process. And what I saw happen in the past was a vote was taken to modify our rules that went into effect immediately, so the rules got done, and it was what it was. We had a quorum of the budget committee, it could be done. But there were, I think, 10, there were 6 members missing, okay? And it's a budget committee, meaning we were there to do what we needed to do, but they weren't there, and that bothered some of the other members somewhat. So I think that would be, I'm taking that little rule out of the laws that I've read that says, if you make a decision on something, it can't happen until the next time. So I think that's, without objection, that could be one of the rules that we put in place. You good with that? Anybody really have a problem with that? I mean, it's self-governing for us, and I think it stops, what can I say, not the playing, but the manipulation that could possibly present itself, okay? That way, it gives everybody notice that the next time we meet, those are the rules of the game, so it doesn't happen right away. I think it's just fair.
Is that rule in place now, or are you proposing that?
It is in place now without objection. Okay, our rules have never been promulgated and formally adopted. It's always been by kind of consent, silent consent, so to speak, and I just enact them. I mean, if we wanted to take time to go through, it'll take a while to formally go through this, so without objection, we can rule ourselves, you know, and if you guys, if 14 of you come up and say, no, we gotta do it this way, we rule ourselves. That's a super majority. We do. I mean, that's what we do. It's never been a problem in the past, so let's play it by ear, go for it. Once we have a starting number, we'll look for a motion. It needs to be second. There's no debate. No debate in your motion, okay? Try to make your motions on point, on target. Let me see if I get it right, okay? Formally, the motion maker will have the opportunity, not required. Sometimes motions are self-sufficient based on earlier debate. The person who's second, and I will try to be scanning the crowd to continue to create a list of those who want to debate. Not everyone has to make a comment. If it's pretty clear, you can. I would like you to be as concise as possible, okay, so that we can get rolling and get decisions made and go forward. Within the motion, what we have done in the past, okay, there are a few things you can do. If you feel a member is off topic, and I have not challenged that, you may raise your hand and ask for a point of order, okay? A point of order is a comment by you directed to the chair, and at that point, silence by the rest of the members, and actually only one person should be talking at a time, and that's the person who has the floor. I would ask that person to please hold. I'll hear the point of order, and then I'd have to rule on the point of order. If I think it's justified, then we'll take some kind of action, whatever that might be. If I don't think it's justified, then we continue. It is what it is. We've never had the time where a person came up with a point of order and I said, no, don't agree, and then another person puts their hand, point of order, and says the same thing. I mean, I think that would give me kind of notice to say, am I missing something here? And we can do that as well. Okay, so if, you know, there are other members who think I'm off base, I've done pretty good with that, and let's keep it up. But again, the chair is the chair who helps to run the meeting. Okay? We govern ourselves. I want to stress that. We are a team. If a majority of the team want to do something differently, then we do that. But it's got to be done in the context, in the spirit of organized debate. Within a motion in a second in the discussion, if you have a point you'd like to make, you raise your hand, you're on the list. If you feel the debate has gone on long enough and you've had enough, you can call the question. Your name, you don't get out of line. You're in the line, okay? But you are not allowed to make a comment to get what you want to get out and then call a question, because that is contradictory. If you've had enough debate, then don't debate. If you've had enough, you call the question at the point. This varies a little bit from Robert's rules. In Robert's rules, when the question is called, okay, a second is required and a majority vote. That still happens. But in Robert's rules, debate stops. In our rules, we said if you had your hand up because you had already determined that you want to speak to the point, we've always allowed everyone on the list who wanted to make a point by the time the question was called. No more people get added to the list. But everyone behind you, if the question was called, seconded, not debated, but voted on. So, in essence, somebody makes a motion, it gets seconded. We're in discussion mode. It's gone on for a while. You feel you've heard the same thing. okay? These are just examples. This doesn't have to be the routine. Your name, I call you, you say, I call the question. Someone, all debate then stops. I wait for a second. If a second is made, there's no other debate. All I do is say the question's been called. All those in favor of calling the question signify by raising your hand. If there are a majority of individuals, after we go through the yeas, the nays, and the abstentions, if the motion passes, the list stops. But the next person in line gets to make their point. And we go through that until it's done, and then it's done. The question is called. We have to vote, up or down. I will restate as many times as I need to. Now, when I go ahead and I restate the question, if you don't understand the question, whether you vote yes, what's going to happen, or if you vote no, what's going to happen, you can request me to explain it. And I will do the best I can. It is very important that every member who is voting understands the ramifications of their vote. So it's not like me trying to push something through for you guys to vote. Please understand. If you don't, I can't remember what we called that. Explaining the vote or something, or it's not a point of order. It could be a point of order. Point of order, Mr. Chairman, can you explain what the ramifications of doing that? Or you can ask, so if I vote yes, this is what happens. It's a method that's used to repeat so we all understand. Because when we get into a piece of a motion that's in debate, and in the middle of it, someone says, you know what, I've heard enough. That amount that was suggested, I want it to be this amount instead. That's called an amended motion. There's a main motion on the floor that says amount A. Someone says, you know what, I'd rather be amount B. At that point, there's a list made up who wants to talk on the main motion. If someone wants to make an amendment, they can. And that can be done in the same breath as you're speaking to the main motion, and then you're saying, gee, wait a minute, I want to make an amended motion. And you state that motion, okay? All debate is suspended, and I use that word, suspended, for the main motion. We go to the amended motion, and I look for a second. If someone thinks that idea is good, they will second that motion, and then we start it over again with the amendment. Now, the interesting part on an amendment is people need to vote on the amendment, but that doesn't make it so. All an amendment does is change the wording of a main motion. So let me throw some numbers out. I'm going to use 1 and 2. The main motion said, I want that number to be 1. During the argument, let's call it a debate, someone says, I make an amendment that it be 2. We then talk about 2. All the rules still apply. Call the question, stop debate, do whatever you want to do. When we're done, we make a vote. If the vote passes, we return to the main motion, but the main motion no longer says 1. The main motion now says 2. And there are people already on the list to talk about it. And now we're talking about 2. That main motion, even though the amendment passed, the main motion could fail. Just like the amendment could fail, and then we can go back. Now, you can make a number of motions. My suggestion here is we don't, if I can do this, I've done it in the past, we can amend an amendment. But here's what happens. You were talking about 1. Someone said, no, I want 2. Someone else says, no, I want 3. If we discuss 3, that's amending the amendment. We then go back and talk about the motion someone made about 2, which could still be 2 or now could be 3. If 3 wins, 2 is no longer talked about at all, which then goes back to the main motion with what passes. It gets confusing. I don't suggest it. It's happened in the past because there was so much diversity and different things. That's just the process. You can call the question. You can ask for points of order. You can make amended motions. And we do this all one at a time. And to make it as organized as possible. You try to direct all your comments to the chair. It helps you not create conversation, because the conversation, we cannot have conversations, okay?
So,
Then they're not gonna be allowed. You can also move to table. What a table motion is, and it's not debatable, a tabling motion says, if you're sitting there and say, you know, you just don't wanna call the question because you wanna end debate and vote, you just don't wanna talk about it at all for some period of time. This had happened in the past, where the motion was, someone was too unsure of making a decision. So a motion to table occurred, and a motion to table also needs to be seconded, but there's no debate. It goes to a vote. Now, that tabling motion, without stating how long it would be tabled, would have to be tabled at least until the next meeting. The motion to table may have something in it that allows it to be tabled until a time certain or something happens. Ridiculously, if you wanted to make a table motion that says until the next full moon or new moon, that's a time and place certain that we would have to then go to the
Almanac.
the star charts, whatever they are, and it wouldn't happen. I'm going to the ridiculous because you can think of something else. Last year we said, I'm tabling in this until we can get a response for this. But you got to be careful, because if you're waiting for a response and the person who's supposed to respond doesn't want that to happen, will never respond, and that will never come off the table. Okay, so you have to be careful about how you do what you do, okay, on a motion to table. It would need a second. It would need a complete a majority vote of those voting, and then it's not discussed. And I will not entertain another motion that is similar, because the committee already said, I don't want to talk about it. That would be on a tabling motion. The reason is because if someone would make then a similar motion, it doesn't make sense, because that similar motion could be made, have been made as an amendment. So that's my reasoning why I wouldn't accept a motion similar to a tabled motion until the next meeting, if there's nothing in the tabling motion or something of that nature. All of this starting to make any dizzying sense.
What majority do you need to take it off the table?
Simple majority of the members present, as long as there is a quorum of the budget committee present.
Simple, okay.
Of simple majority of the members present and voting. There are 16 members on the budget committee. Half of those are 8, plus 1 is 9. So 50-50. A vote of 4, bad number, 5 for, 5 against, fails. Okay? A dead split, motions fail. You have to have at least one more. Now, 16 members, vote is 6 for, 6 against, and what do we got left over? 4 abstained. The motion pass or not?
No.
It does not. If it was 7 for, 6 against, and 3 abstained, it passes. Now let's go something even wild. 16 members, 4 for, 3 against, 9 abstain. Does it pass or not?
No.
4-3.
Passes. The members voting are 7. When you abstain, you're not voting.
Now, why would you abstain?
Why would I abstain?
Why would a person?
You would have to ask the person who's abstaining.
They don't want to go on the record.
Can we
Here's-
do away with that? Because I think you need to be on the record.
You can be on the record. You're on the record of abstaining. There's a number of reasons. You can call them valid or not. Abstaining is a choice that you're allowed to make. Okay? And that kind of question will not be tolerated during debate. Okay? That would be a parking lot question.
Can we change the rules?
To what?
If you're in your seat, you vote yes or no?
No. That's not legislatively required. There's nothing in the legislation that I'm aware of that would allow us to stranglehold a member who has been elected to have that happen. If you can find one, okay.
A good example of
We can make-
abstaining is when, I've abstained when I haven't read meeting minutes, or I haven't been to a meeting, and I'm being asked to approve the minutes.
That,
Well, why would I say yes, I wasn't there? And I can't
Correct.
say no, I wasn't there, so I abstain.
and some people would say, you know what, I don't care either way. I'll let the group who is passionately for and against this to make that decision. That's in your mind. You make that decision on how you
Right,
want
I
to do
can
it.
see how it could work.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's been times, and I've been asked before, why the heck did you abstain? In fact, the latest one was when that thing came about, that 10% thing. I was one of, what, 2, maybe 3 people who abstained. So why? And I said, well, because well, we don't have to go over it, but there was a reason, because I can't let myself talk about it, because I said I wouldn't tolerate it. But there was a reason, and it's, if you are on the, I'm trying to say, I've never had a time that I can remember in the years we've done this where there were more abstentions than there were either yeses or nos. Yeah, I can't remember a time. I preface that by saying, if the yeses have the least amount of votes, so it did not win, we allowed, or was it the abstains? I'm trying to remember who we allowed to read into the record why, if they wanted to.
Abstains.
Why? Was it only the abstentions, or was it the losing as well?
Abstentions.
Only abstentions.
Yep.
If you abstain, and there you go. You can't ask, but you can offer a reason of why you abstained. How's that? And you can also say, no comment. I don't want to make a comment.
Scott offered a reason on that 10% abstention that you were talking about earlier.
I think he did.
Mhm.
I may have as well, so we'd have to go back and read the record.
Oh, I don't remember that. I'd love to know it.
Parking lot
It's
question.
in the minutes, man.
No, I think he
It
said,
is-
I'm
it
not
is
gonna
in
I
the
give
remember
direction
what
to
it was,
myself.
too.
Yeah, it was one of those where,
I'll tell you after.
yeah, I don't remember what I said.
In the parking lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
got
parking
it.
lot. It's, but it's, I think it's in the minutes, but I just don't want to take time in this meeting to do that. Do you, who have either watched us or been part of this, have I missed any of the nuances of some of the things that we do? You remember anything, David?
Third time around, I'm beginning to understand the rules.
Cool. Good.
You're doing good.
Yeah. You've gone through once, I'm looking, Ivan's been here for 5 years, 4 years?
No.
6?
No.
3?
Seems like 5, but.
Seems
like it.
Dick has been here since the day after dirt. You've been 6 years, I mean, have I missed anything? John, you've been around for a while, so.
You
Bill,
hit the nail on the head.
yeah. Okay, so if we got it
So-
that,
So Dan, if somebody's got a problem and they can set the rules aside, they can make a motion to set the rules aside to get the vote of the committee to say whether they want to or something, can't they?
we have
That's what's brought forth to us.
rarely
Right.
come to a time where we've had discussions where it was evident we were not going anywhere. The person who could provide answers and clarity were not one of the members. We did set aside the rules as a majority to request further information to get clarity in order to complete the motion. But I gotta tell you, that was before last year.
It's been done, I know.
It's been done, and we did it because prior to last year, we never entered deliberation
Using debate
without
mode.
first getting this information. I started something new last year where I said, here's the budget, we're gonna take time to actually ask all the questions, get everything done, spend the time perusing without making motions. In the past, we actually went into deliberations almost immediately, which meant, and this is where it came, someone made a motion, and others were sitting there saying, you know, the only way I'm gonna get further information on this in order to make a decision is to second it so we can talk about it and get more information. And so that is why, and those things went on and on and on, because we were grasping to really understand what's going on. We hadn't had the chance to really prove. So, last year we started something new, and I think it worked well enough that before going into deliberation, we pounded the heck out of the numbers and asked all the questions, and I believe everybody got great majority satisfied with their answers, which then gave us a weapon to go into deliberation without needing to suspend the rules, and we didn't. We were able to get some things done. Although, as Dick says, if there comes to a place, depending on where it is and where the clarity and whether we can or can't, I would rather not involve anyone else in our deliberations except the 16 of us. We have a selectman representative, we have a school board representative who are supposed to be here to represent their budgets, okay? And that's who we're supposed to rely on to get clarity starting Thursday, okay? And that would be rarely used, I hope. I hope we can get through this by going through specifically and definitively. Dave?
Which budget are you starting with on Thursday?
I'm hoping to start with the one, can I say the amended version? And I will probably...
Excuse me, town or school?
Town.
No, thank
We
you.
will start with the town on Thursday. We've had the town for a little longer. We just got some of the final answers. We have 2 more open questions. I suspect we'll do the town Thursday. Hopefully we can work on the Tuesday after that, which is the 6th? 7th, and then the 9th. Okay, that's 3 days. I believe we should be able to get it done in less than 3 days, okay, which means that's 9 hours. If we can get the truck rolling, and I think it might start slow, but we'll get the hang of it on Thursday. Excuse me, it shouldn't be taking us too long to get where we want to be. We'll see, we'll play it by ear, okay? As the budget deliberation schedule is out, we talked about, let me just pull this out, if I still have it. I'm not sure if I do. It's Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday. The 2nd, which is Thursday, these all start at 6:30. The 7th, the 9th, the 14th, the 16th, we're done on the 21st, okay? I have an engagement on the 16th that if we met on that night would be the first meeting that I would not have attended since I was elected 8 years ago. So we'll see how we're going, which means if we do have to meet that night, I won't be here, which means I will on the 14th, before we go, you will have to elect a vice chairman who would run that meeting.
No, I
Okay,
can't
and the
be
vice
because
chairman
I'm
must be an
I'm not
elected
an
member.
elected member.
It must be an elected member. That would be something, so you can start thinking about it now, okay? One of the things I gotta warn you. No, I won't warn you. It's way too much fun to watch this. All right, so let's see, and so I would be very hopeful if we can move it forward, and if we could actually take that day off, because we're doing well, that would be cool. I am hesitant to finish the budget while I'm not here, although you can do what
Why
you do.
can't
I
we
mean,
just
I'm
change the
not
date?
any special than anybody else who can't make it.
Why can't we just change the date if that's the case?
We actually can.
Make it Wednesday that week.
It would be Tuesday and Wednesday that week. That's true, we could do that.
I think that'd be a good,
Hate to break an 8-year string.
I know. Me too.
I can't be here the 15th.
Oh, you've seen
I have to
you've seen
present
my
my
minutes,
budget.
haven't you?
I have to present my budget that night to my
Okay.
town council.
Are you Carl Rifkin? Are you
Carl
Carl
Rifkin?
Rifkin?
No, I'm not Carl, I'm Dan Ripken. Are you guys okay with meeting 2 nights in a row?
you want a motion on that?
It's not a motion, it's more,
See what happens.
the meetings are a call of the chair, but the chair usually doesn't call meetings unless he's gonna have people there.
I'm okay with it.
Me too.
Okay, let's do that. I mean, that's thinking out of the box that I didn't do.
So
But
we'll have to wait
that
another
wouldn't be
year for
something I did
Jen
anyway.
to
Okay,
rise
we'll
to the
make that
vice
amendment, I'll
chair.
get it to Catherine. If we will meet on the 15th. That actually gives us a longer weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and don't forget, the meeting after that would be the 21st. If we get our work done before then, if we finalize things on the 15th, we could have a shortened version of our regular meeting on the 21st, which includes public comment, which includes looking at the
7 o'clock
status.
start?
Hmm?
7 o'clock start on the 21st?
It would be a 7 o'clock start on the 21st, okay? The only 6:30 meetings are the next few that go Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Right.
Then every other, those all start at 6:30. And then it's 7 o'clock for the, till the next time we do budgets, I think. Process, everybody good with process? I mean, David?
When, during the deliberation dates, are you going to have your MS7 condensed from all the long spreadsheets?
During the initial motion to start.
So on this Thursday?
Yes.
Thank you.
That will be because that's the basis of what we're required to do, is to present an MS7 style budget to the Department of Revenue Administration. And for the town and the school, it's quite easy.
Do you anticipate sending that out tomorrow night?
Yes, if I get it done tomorrow night, I'll either send it out Wednesday night or Thursday morning if I get it. Yeah, so that you guys will be all aware. It's a public document, and it's no real different. It's not, it's fairly, all I have to do is pull the spreadsheets from last year, and numbers are there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Guy?
And just to make sure, I think everybody understands, I think you agree, we're not limited to MS-27 lines in making our motions, correct? MS-7 and MS-27 lines.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
In fact,
All right.
I encourage,
Detail.
if you would like to go to the lines as presented, okay, that does not bother me. What will bother me is if you come in with your motions, okay, so if you're thinking of them now, now's a good time, and say, well, I want to take this for this, okay, I either need a minimum an MS7 number, that's the minimum in law. So you can't say, I want the town budget to be this, or I want the school budget, that's not a motion I can accept. I can only accept something that the Department of Revenue will accept, and that's the MS7, MS-27. If you make a motion on a single line, on a single page, that rolls up to MS7. Not a problem. Not a problem. That answers the question. You can go as much detail as this, or you can go to the MS7. The MS7 pretty much follows the summary sheet, okay? There are some minor adjustments. You're going to see that fire is fire, parks and rec, library is library. As